my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams tribe. I'm Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and on behalf of my partners, Dr. Michael Akinfora and Dr. Wanda Lee McPhee, we want to thank you all for subscribing. As we surge to 100,000 subscribers, we would like to show you our appreciation with 3 free gifts. In our show notes on iTunes and Podomatic, there are 3 separate links to each of our most latest ebooks: Fermentation 101, Paleo Crockpot Style, and Whole Foods Harvest. Thank you again, and before you begin listening to this incredible podcast, don't forget to register for our upcoming summit, the Longevity and Anti-Aging Project, Living Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, at www.antiagingproject.com. Hello and welcome back. I am your host, Dr. Noah DeCoyer from the Center of Epigenetic Expression, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. Today I have an amazing guest to introduce, and that's Harry Massey. Harry's story is incredibly inspirational for anyone dealing with a long-term severe illness or overcoming other kinds of seriously challenging circumstances. Just briefly, Harry was sick with serious chronic fatigue syndrome all throughout his 20s. 4 of those years he was bedridden, 6 years completely housebound. Harry's been an extremely determined person, tried many things on his road to recovery, including nutrition, naturopathy, fasting, Gerson therapy, and other biomechanical approaches, and most that you can think of. He eventually fully recovered after discovering energy medicine and studying quantum biology. After 10 years of illness, this is what Harry went on to do. He went on to become a successful entrepreneur and the CEO of NES Health, an energy medicine company he founded with Peter Fraser, where they have created an energy field testing and treating device, which is the highest selling in Germany, the home of that type of technology. He became a published author, writing Decoding the Human Body Field, The New Science of Information as Medicine. He went on to make award-winning films like the Living Matrix movie and educating people about how the body field can influence health. He then went on to make the full-length documentary film Choice Point, which I absolutely love, where he interviewed luminaries like Sir Richard Branson, Bishop Desmond Tutu, and Barbara Marx Hubbard, exploring approaches to solving some of the world's largest problems. And he has a new movie currently being made called Supercharged, which looks at how top performers have been able to transform themselves from lethargy to having abundant energy for life. So, racked with illness, bedbound, to literally changing the world. Welcome, Harry. It's a great pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Oh, thanks, Noah. It's great to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
That's a mouthful and an extraordinary story, and I know our audience would love to hear more. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I'm 40 years old now, and when I was 20, I ended up with, basically when I was 20 at university, I was a very hedonistic type person, and I was doing tons and tons of rock climbing and studying hard, but I was also a bit of a party animal as well, which perhaps I shouldn't admit on the podcast, but it's good to be truthful.
Yes, it is.
It's always good. But unfortunately, my sort of over-the-top hedonistic lifestyle was really just trying to pack far too much in, and I had no concept that you could be ill at that age. And I was mountaineering up Mont Blanc in Chamonix, which is in France, and I ended up being basically I ended up with this fever, and I basically never recovered for the next 8 years, and went on this very, very sort of horrendous spiral downwards. And after about 3 years of that, I ended up completely bedbound, where it was really like living in a completely dark cloud where you can hardly think. And I only had sort of energy to get up to the bathroom and maybe grab something from the fridge. So yeah, it was pretty severe. I tried all of the conventional routes, and like conventional medicine didn't really know what to do with me. Although they did recognise like a number of my blood markers were all completely off, and I had at least Britain's lowest magnesium level recorded, and I was put on all these IV drips, and even though I was on these IV magnesium drips, they would go back and test me a few months later, and my magnesium levels were like still chronically low. And I remember once they went even lower than they were originally. They couldn't understand this at all. And yeah, I mean, in short, and from that I started trying all sorts of other sort of alternative treatments, like Gerson therapy, where you're juicing sort of 7 or 8 pints of juice a day and slow cooking everything and doing all these coffee enemas. But the issue with that for me is it consumes so much energy from myself that I was left with less energy, so I wasn't able to do it. And also tried sort of homeopathy and all sorts of other sort of naturopathic type techniques.
It's all right. So you were at the point where your mother was essentially taking care of you, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a bit worse for my mother because my dad at the time started having mini strokes, and he actually died during that period. So yeah, my mother was sort of looking after 2 of us, and then my dad died, and I was still ill, stuck at home. My brother had left for Australia. So yeah, that was the situation.
Jeez. And so after trying all these different therapies with little results, what did you have to do, or what did you discover that turned everything around for you?
It was a number of things. So once you're in a really sort of, I think it's after about five or 6 years, I started to accept that I might be ill for a long time, and I thought, well, if I'm going to be ill for a long time, I really don't want to be this burden on my mother. So I actually thought that I should probably start some sort of online business, so I could create an income, so I'd be able to afford carers or whatever I would need. And so that was one sort of little empowerment type influence. Another one was I read The Field by Lynn McTaggart, and in reading that, I really started to understand how my own consciousness was completely interconnected with our reality. And so I realized I was very sort of invested in being ill at that identity level. And once I realized that, I could sort of like work out to go somewhere else. And then the other sort of influence, and those were 2 very strong influences. And then the third piece of it was, I just thought to myself, like, if I'm so ill at home and can't go and visit a practitioner to find out what was wrong with me, there must be an awful lot of other people in that same situation. So I thought if I was able to make like a home wellness system where I could work out what was wrong with me from the comfort of my own home, and also work out what was wrong with other people, then that would be a good thing. And A, it would help get other people better, and B, at the same time, I would gain the knowledge to get myself better as well. And so I sort of set upon this, what now seems like an almost impossible journey to try and create this home wellness system. But from my point of view at the time, I was so low, and I was mostly in bed most of the day, and you only have a few hours a day that you can sort of have any sort of lucid thoughts, and the rest of the time you're just exhausted. But as I really didn't feel I had anything to lose but to sort of like investigate this and see if I could do that, I gave it a go. So yeah, quite what happened in my mind to make me sort of shift from basically I was shifting from being a victim to thinking, well, now I'm gonna sort of dig myself out of this. And really, I think it was through that idea of trying to create an overall system. And then when you do something like that, the knowledge and people tend to turn up to help make it happen, and that's precisely what did happen.
It's amazing what reading one book or hearing one bit of information can dramatically change the course of your entire life. It absolutely is. And also I think the most important part is acting on that information. And I've had a few books like that actually. In the making of the Living Matrix, we bought a house in Spain, and Bruce Lipton's, this whole house was completely gutted, and there was left on the floor by the previous owners was Bruce Lipton books, which is the biology of belief. Of course.
And And then at the same time, two different customers of ours posted the book in the post. So in the same week, I got 3 copies of Biology of Belief. So yeah, obviously we got in contact with Bruce and put him in the living matrix. But yeah, books have got a lot of power.
Well, let me clarify this. So you're telling me when you were making the movie, you bought a house, and just randomly in that house, the Biology of Belief was left there.
So this house was I bought under basically the previous owners hadn't been able to pay their mortgage, so they'd completely gutted the whole place down to they'd pulled out some of the sinks, all of the light fittings. Like, there was absolutely no furniture, anything of value was completely stripped out. And the only thing left in this house, in what actually became Peter's office, who's the scientist I ended up working with, was that book.
That's amazing. And for the audience who doesn't know who Bruce Lipton is, or the Biology of Belief, that's something near and dear to us. He's the one who brought the science of epigenetics to the forefront of science. So he's a really fascinating individual. Wow, that's an amazing story. I'm stupefied by that. But yes, now. The other questions I had was, I know where we're heading. I'm very familiar with your work, and I'd like you to define a few terms for our audience, so as we go through these next questions, they have a little bit of a better understanding. So the 3 terms are energy medicine, quantum biology, and the body field.
Sure. So what energy medicine is, actually energy medicine can have many meanings, but in short, it's medicine that is looking at energy in the body. So even things like MRIs and X-rays technically are energy medicine, but most people in the energy medicine community would not want to admit that. But mostly, energy medicine is when you're using energy to both read and diagnose something in the body, but also to treat it in some particular way. And there's things like pulsed EMF would be classified as energy medicine, or light therapy would be classified as energy medicine. And even there's this sort of more fundamental field called information medicine, which perhaps I'll explain in a minute. And then the second one was
quantum biology.
Quantum biology. Okay, so. Quantum biology, in a way, it's just a slightly different twist. I mean, all that the word quantum means is when you're looking at molecules it's not even molecules, but when you look, all the word quantum means is a small packet of something. So it's basically. It's when you're applying physics to biology, and so you're looking at reality through that lens of physics, rather than what most of medicine or biology does is look through the lens of biochemistry. So so for instance, like if we take that very classical Einstein equation of E equals mc squared, which all that is saying is that energy is equivalent to matter. And so, for that concept of quantum biology, you could also say that energy is equivalent to life. And basically, quantum biology is when we're looking at biology through that energy or through that physics lens.
Right. And lastly, the body field.
Sure. So, what the body field is wherever you have energy, and absolutely everything fundamentally is energy, as we sort of just described from that E equals mc squared equation. Wherever you have energy moving from A to B, you have a field that's surrounding it. And I mean, this is another. I'm a bit of a fan of Einstein, but another Einstein quote is that. The particle is governed by the field. So every single particle, all of matter, ultimately is surrounded and governed by a field. And the same is true in your own biology, in your own body. And what we call the fields of the body is basically the body field. And there's many levels of that. I mean, for instance, like the heart generates a very significant magnetic field that comes out about 15 foot. So that's a very measurable magnetic field. There's also biophotons, even being emitted by your DNA. That's also part of the body field. I mean, so it basically covers the full not quite the full electromagnetic spectrum, but from sound generally up to light. And it's that's basically the body field.
So every living thing, every living creature has some sort of heart that creates a magnetic field that goes out 15 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. And your nervous system, for instance, are always generating out alpha and delta waves. Like even your lungs are generating a field. And it gets even weird. I say weirder than that, but if you're into cavity physics, when you're looking at a cell, I mean, a cell is a cavity which is very similar to a guitar. And for instance, like you have, infrared light, which is basically heat. As that enters a cell, that heat is able to be transferred into electrons, and basically power up the mitochondria. So there's many different levels of how energy exchanges in the body.
So, for example, if you're in a room with with anybody, in just about any room, you're connected to those people through all these different fields, through your heart field, to your nervous system field, correct? There's some sort of interaction constantly with these people, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been some studies done by the HeartMath Institute, where if you have two people in the same room and they're in an engaging conversation, and you wire up their heartbeats, you'll notice that their heartbeats end up in a coherent state, which is pretty incredible. But basically, yeah, their heart fields are communicating across space, and they end up in a completely coherent. And all the word coherent means is basically they end up following the same pattern.
That's fascinating. And now, the field, I mean, the Earth generates a gigantic magnetic field too, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was mainly discovered by Schumann. You've probably heard of the Schumann resonance, and the Earth's magnetic field is always oscillating. I think it's around 7.1, 7.2 hertz, and up from that. But yeah, absolutely. And the Earth's field is also completely essential for health, and that's how we sort of come across that concept of grounding. That actually, if you put yourself in a Faraday cage, not that you'd want to, but if you put mice in a Faraday cage for a few days, their health starts dropping. And it's after about a month they die because they haven't got the magnetic field to help power them up.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And we're always, at this point, we're becoming more and more disconnected from the Earth, right? We're in offices, we're not on the ground, we're not at the beach, we're not walking with barefoot. I mean, we're constantly becoming more and more disconnected. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the major themes in our new film, Supercharged, as we're really having a very close look at the modern environment and how that is sort of very disconnected from our original environment. And it's not only that we're getting disconnected, we're also getting connected in a way to the wrong type of magnetic fields and EMF. Because I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm sitting with my laptop on the Wi-Fi on my lap in a hotel room, which is not the best thing. But afterwards, I'll be very good and go outside with my bare foot in the grass and ground myself back.
Right. Right. Now, hear me out, so if each human or each living creature creates multiple fields, and the Earth generates a field, are we all then connected via these different fields at all times, every human, or am I thinking way out of the box here when I ask that question?
You're not at all. So this is where it gets into physics a little bit, but let's go there for fun. So
Sure.
at the moment we've basically been talking about sort of normal electromagnetic fields, but as you asked that question of quantum, now the thing where the real finding in quantum physics is that actually every single particle, and we're talking every single photon and every single electron is completely connected to every single other electron and photon in the universe. And if you influence an electron here, you basically influence the status of an electron off in Australia. And that's a very strange concept for people to think of. And in the world of quantum, like particles do very, very funny things. But the fundamental understanding from that is we're not just connected by some sort of by some radio wave. We're actually the very fundamental nature of our own matter and our own reality is completely interconnected with everything else, and that's why you get these sort of ideas of law of attraction and that type of thing, and that's why consciousness or your own thoughts are so intimately connected with reality. And I'll give you an amazing, it's actually an incredible example of that, and which has influenced some of our work. So about 14 years ago, I read in the book The Field about these experiments done by Princeton University, where they basically took people, had them blindfolded, and asked them to influence a random event generator. And what they were trying to do is influence a TV screen to either be white or black, and then the outcome of the white or black was basically connected to a random event generator. Statistically, and if you're into sort of normal maths or science, it should come out exactly 50-50, but it didn't. It came out at about 54% in favour of whichever square the particular person was thinking about, which is very strange for science. But what it's showing is that there's a direct influence between thought and what should be a random event. And when I read that, I thought I would basically run my own experiment, and I hired a programmer and basically drew out a chessboard of black and white squares, made some black, some white, and asked this program that was based on randomness to fill out this whole grid. And it filled out this whole grid correctly, which had a 1 in 64 million chances of happening, and which is pretty incredible. And it gets even weird. It gets even more amazing than that. But based on that, I basically used that technique to then see if you could detect health problems with that. So we basically started testing against different health organs and different mental states based on this principle that there's that absolutely everything is interconnected, and nothing truly is random. And what we found is when we started basically comparing people with this new type of scanning, we could basically get all of this health information we could get all this health information from in effect what you could call the field. It gets pretty deep. So that's probably a better analogy of really what quantum physics means in quantum biology. You're looking at the interconnectivity of all matter and all life.
Yeah, let's go a little bit more down that rabbit hole, and then I want to talk how you created systems to influence this. Some people know that as the butterfly effect, right? If in some ways, if a butterfly flaps its wings in New Jersey, it can cause a hurricane in Thailand or something along those lines, right? I mean, is that That's people are familiar with that terminology.
It's a little bit like that, but it's more literally directly connected to you know to what you to what you're thinking, and
Okay.
you know yeah,
So it's more thoughts and energetics.
yeah, yeah.
And then in one of my mentors, I heard him say, John DeMartini say, if you look at the human body, we're made of all our organ systems, and then the individual organs, and then the tissues, and then the cells, and those cells are broken down to molecules, then atoms, then quarks, and it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to all you're left with is photons of light, and we're basically sending and receiving stations of photons or
Well,
light.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one way of viewing the world is as frozen light, or if you like, another way of viewing it is actually all there really is a field. All there really is energy that is frozen in place by a field, so that we can experience it. But there isn't actually anything solid there. I mean, that's totally right. I mean, yeah, it's a bit like frozen energy or frozen light, but yeah, there's nothing solid there at all, which is a bit of a scary thought when you really think about it.
It is. So all right, so now we've kind of we really hit this energy thing pretty hard, and how have you used this, or how did you first use this to impact your life, and then how have you used this to take it further to create companies and movies to impact people's energy fields and to really transform their health in dramatic ways?
Sure. So yeah, so if I go back to the story of when I was ill, after I was trying all these different things and not getting too far, and I had that idea of creating a home wellness system, I was basically put in touch with this professor from Australia called Peter Fraser, and he'd set up the first acupuncture college in Australia, and which he left after founding, and then basically so he could continue loads of research into mapping out the rest of what he called the human body field. And what he found is, so he used to treat people using acupuncture needles, but he basically sort of really looked into homeopathy. If you like, made a fusion between homeopathy and acupuncture, where he was able to imprint the field information into a liquid of a particular function that he was trying to get the body to do. And yeah, he was basically able to imprint the field information into the memory of water, and then when you drink this water, your own body field is able to pick up that signal a bit like a resonant. It's a bit like a resonance type effect, and then your body reacts and triggers off a healing response. So, I mean, I was introduced to him by Dr. Julian Kenyon, who owns the Dove Clinic in England, and he'd been working with Peter on a cancer diagnostic device, which they managed to do, but Johnson and Johnson bought the company and closed it. So I sort of met Peter at this fortunate time where he was available to do all this stuff. And he basically started making me pharmaceuticals, because I was still really sick at that time. And the first one he made was an antidote to a group of flaviviruses, which basically from that I got this short fever for about 3 or 4 days, and it wasn't that I got cured or anything, but I knew I'd had this reaction, so I knew there was something in it. And then he basically subsequently he must have made me another 40 or 50 different pharmaceuticals over the next year and a half, and sort of layer by layer, all these sort of incredible things started to happen. I think like the next one was one called emotional stress release, and so I used to be completely wired and tired all the time, and then after I took that, the wired bit went away, and I was just tired, but it meant my body was getting the proper rest because I wasn't wired all the time. And then I think then we made a heart driver, a lung driver, and actually a nervous system driver, and it went on. And in short, we basically ended up making this analysis system at the same time that Peter was treating me with what we now call infoceuticals, and we sort of reworked a lot of what he'd been doing over the last 20 years to make a sort of a more comprehensive, easy to understand system where we ended up with a device you can put your hand on. It reads your body field, and then we basically use the infoceuticals to trigger a healing response back based on the scan results.
So these infoceuticals are basically memory imprinted water that helps your body heal from whatever barrier that person's body has from healing.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, basically, we've subtly altered the energy field of the water, because what water, along with everything else, can be influenced by fields. And I mean, if you like, we could have used a brick, but the reason we used water is because 99% of the molecules in your body, that was a joke, the brick bit. The reason we use water is because 99% of the molecules in your body are water, so it makes it an extremely good medium to be able to influence the body field. But I mean, in short, it's an advance on homeopathy, because in homeopathy you dilute a substance that will cause that symptom if you took it in whole, like nux vomica. If you took a lot of nux vomica, you would vomit. But the way me and Peter looked at it, we thought, well, why give the sort of negative information to get the body to react against it? Why not just say to the body, look, this is how an optimal liver is when it's working properly, or an optimal heart, or an optimal nervous system. And so we basically imprinted the field information of how a liver is when it's working properly, or a kidney, etc. And then you drink that. So it's an updated form of homeopathy is probably the easiest way to look at it. And you and Peter are still treating people with this form of care? Do you know, I think we emailed out this morning. I think we've hit 1 million people. So yeah, it's been going about 14 years, that company. It's Nest Health is the name of that. We have basically a few thousand practitioners who I don't know how many patients they're treating each week, but I guess they're all treating 10 to 30 patients a week each over 14 years.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now, beyond NES Health, you're a movie maker. So how about telling us a little bit about the movies you've made and the documentaries you've made?
Sure. So, I mean, the first one we made was The Living Matrix: A New Science of Healing, and that was basically made to help explain this idea of the body field, and how energy and information can control your biology, and also really to empower people so that they could see these different types of solutions. So I mean, yeah, we already mentioned Bruce Lipton, but we went and filmed Bruce Lipton, Lynn McTaggart, Eric Pohl, Peter Fraser, the Institute of Genetic Sciences, and the HeartMath Institute. And then we also went and filmed 4 completely incurable diseases. So someone with cerebral palsy, someone with 4 tumours in their brain, there's someone with fibromyalgia, there's probably someone else I can't remember, but and then we basically use these different energy medicine techniques. Now, one of them was Nest. That was the fibromyalgia case. I think Eric Pohl was the cerebral palsy. I think it was an NLP person who did the person with the tumours in the brain. And we basically filmed them doing basically what should be completely incurable diseases, or it is by medicine's standards. then we basically weave the explanations of the science with those stories of how they were able to heal themselves with these different energy medicine techniques. And yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, the end reason really is just to give people all these different choices or solutions. So when you are stuck in bed and feeling absolutely dreadful, and you don't think there's any hope, well, there really is, and there's 4 great sort of examples on film to help empower and lift you up.
What about Supercharged? You mentioned that before.
Yes, Supercharged. God, we're filming the last bit of it next week, actually. Basically, Supercharged in a way, the Living Matrix is a slightly more advanced film, because it's all about the body field. The Supercharged is really looking at just the energy piece, and it's looking at how energy works in biology, but more importantly, it's very practical, and it looks at how people have been able to go from sort of sickly sludge to having supercharged energy, and really through one main method, actually. It's of how people are able to optimize their environment, or in other words, optimize how they're exchanging energy with their environment. So we're looking at things like circadian rhythms and light, like a hot and cold thermogenesis, connection to the earth, friends and family, like diet and intermittent fasting and oxygenation, and but probably the largest concept in there is how the body is able to work as a water battery. So how the body is basically able to charge itself up and also use that charge.
So it's a movie that's going to help people hack their own energy systems. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah, I think the tagline is going to be like energized body, lightning mind.
And you have another project, right, called Choice Point?
Yeah, I mean that's another film where we, that film was all about helping people to find and align their purpose, and it basically has wisdom from people like Richard Branson, the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, Scylla Elworthy, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Greg Braden, and a few other people. But it's and it was also made to slightly correct. It came after the Secret era, and we were basically making it to slightly correct a misconception of how you could attract anything if you just visualized it, and we just wanted to make the point that there are all of these patterns in the world, and really if you spend your time trying to understand the world and the patterns that are going on around you, and then align your purpose with patterns that will support you, then that idea of law of attraction, it'll be like on steroids. But if you just try and attract something that the universe and other people won't support, you'll have a hard time. And so I saw a lot of people have a hard time just trying to do anything from The Secret, and that they weren't really lined up with what society would support. And it's a simple little sort of thing, but it can make a massive difference. And I knew from our own journey. I mean, the reason I got healthy, and the reason I ended up with a business, to put it bluntly, is simply because we tried to make this home wellness system that would that would be good for society. And if you try and, because I had absolutely no money and no energy and really no ability to do that. I mean, I wasn't some physics person or coder or anything, but because it was something that would help other people like Peter, the scientist, and other people came in to help make that happen. And I know for myself, like, yeah, if you align your purpose with patterns that are greater than you, that will support you, amazing things happen. And I couldn't say that strongly enough.
Now, do you sometimes just simply pinch yourself from going to being someone who's bedridden to somebody who's filming a movie with Richard Branson in it and talking to Bruce Lipton and just doing these incredible things? Sometimes you must sit back and say, "Holy mackerel, this is a pretty amazing ride."
It is amazing, but I don't sit back too often. But yeah, no, sometimes I do. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you start to get, I guess you do. Well, I mean, I always appreciate it, and I don't know, like you always just think, well, where can you stretch your brain to next? It's like a little sort of, you're always testing the boundaries of it.
I agree. Now, Harry, how can people find out more about you and what you do and what you have moving forward?
That's pretty easy. So all the stuff about the body field and the living matrix. If you go to nesthealth.com, basically, yeah, I mean, there's I think if you put your email address in there, we give out the living matrix for free. So that's the easiest way. For Supercharged, Supercharged is going to be out in June, which will be on superchargedmovie.com. And again, yeah, if you put an email address in there, I think it'll be given out free for at least a month, I think. So yeah, if you put your email address in, you'll be alerted when that's ready.
Fantastic. Wow, Harry, that was like drinking from a fire hose. I appreciate your time today. Any last words for our audience?
No, well, no, I just say, like, if you're in a bit of a dark place, there are huge amounts of solutions out there, and even if what you heard from me isn't right, just keep looking and keep trying things. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Audience, you can sign up for our incredible weekly email at www.centerforepigeneticexpression.com, and please let me encourage you to check out our first project at www.painreliefproject.com, and you could sign up now for our new summit being released in June at www.antiagingproject.com. Lastly, help us help you in an even greater manner by giving us a review on iTunes. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.